welcome to the Mini Book Podcast on YouTube.
Let's get to the Mini Book Podcast on YouTube.
Okay, let's immerse ourselves right in. Picture this. January 1933. A new leader steps up, early 40s, got his respected predecessor right there with him.
Okay.
And the whole day, it's like 5 hours solid of parades, celebrations going late into the night. Now you hear that, and instantly you probably think, JFK's inauguration, right?
It's the immediate picture, yeah. But the fascinating thing is, those exact details, they also describe Adolf Hitler becoming Chancellor of Germany.
Exactly. It's quite startling, isn't it?
It really is. And it shines a light on something fundamental about us, about how we work. We're constantly making assumptions.
All the time.
Yeah, based on, sometimes complete information, sometimes just scraps. And these assumptions, they really, really shape our behavior, our choices, often without us even noticing.
And this isn't just some historical footnote either. Think about businesses today. They're making huge bets, strategic decisions, all grounded in what they think they know about the market or their customers or even themselves.
Right. But what if that foundation, that understanding, is actually flawed?
The results can be, well, anything from a small stumble to complete disaster. It makes you wonder, how many big strategies are built on assumptions that aren't quite solid?
It definitely does. And it brings up a really important question. How do we get our perceptions closer to reality, especially when, the stakes are high? Often, even if a company is successful for a bit, they assume they know why.
They think they've cracked it.
Yeah, but that doesn't automatically mean they can repeat it. Understanding the real drivers, that's the key insight.
Absolutely. Now let's look at some examples that really inspire. Think about Apple in the early days. $1 million revenue in year one, then $1 billion company just 6 years later. That's not just luck.
Not at all. Or Martin Luther King Jr., he mobilized a whole nation around civil rights. Plenty of others faced similar situations, similar injustices, but they didn't ignite that kind of movement. What was different?
What was that missing piece?
When you look at these kinds of extraordinary successes, the common thread isn't just the product, like with Apple, or the speeches, like with Dr. King. It's something deeper, something that resonates beyond the whats or even the how.
It taps into something fundamental. And this is where we see the big difference between real inspiration and, well, manipulation.
Yeah.
We see manipulation everywhere, don't we?
Oh, constantly. In the marketplace, definitely. Those ads playing on fear, is there radon lurking in your basement? Or dangling these, get-rich-quick schemes?
Be a millionaire in 6 weeks.
Yeah.
Right?
And linking this back, these tactics, they might give you a short-term bump, maybe a quick sale, but they don't build loyalty. Not real, lasting loyalty.
Yeah.
It can actually create a kind of dependency, like businesses getting hooked on constant price cuts just to get people in the door. It's not a stable way to operate.
It becomes a race to the bottom, doesn't it? Just cheapening everything. But genuine inspiration, that works differently. It connects with deeper emotions, not just insecurity or some fleeting desire.
It builds a real connection. And critically, it fosters loyalty.
And that loyalty, that's a huge advantage. It means you're not constantly scrambling, constantly having to manipulate with prices or, adding just one more feature.
Exactly. That loyalty gives you breathing room. It gives customers a reason to stick with you, even if a competitor is slightly cheaper or has some new gimmick.
Okay, so we've seen how assumptions can trip us up. And we talked about manipulation versus inspiration. Now let's really immerse ourselves in the core idea here. Start with why, and this concept called the golden circle.
Right, the golden circle. It's essentially 3 concentric circles. On the outside, you have what a company does.
The products, the services.
Exactly. Then the next circle in is how they do it. This could be their unique process, their values, their selling proposition. But right at the center, the core, that's the why. Why do they exist? What's their purpose, their cause, their fundamental belief? What gets them out of bed in the morning beyond just profit?
And the interesting thing is, most companies communicate completely the wrong way around.
They do. They start from the outside and work in. They tell you what they do. We sell computers.
Makes sense. It's tangible.
Right. Then maybe they explain how they do it. They're user-friendly and beautifully designed, but they rarely, if ever, articulate why they do what they do. That core purpose often remains unstated or maybe even unclear to them.
So they go, what, how, maybe why, if you're lucky. But the truly inspiring leaders and organizations, they flip it completely.
They start from the inside out. They start with why.
And if you think about how we process that, it hits differently, doesn't it? Starting with why.
Absolutely. It taps into that emotional part of the brain, the limbic brain we talked about. It's not just about understanding the facts. It's about feeling a connection and alignment.
Let's try rewriting Apple's message, starting with why. Instead of, we make great computers, maybe it's something like, everything we do, we believe in challenging the status quo. We believe in thinking differently.
Okay, that's the why.
The way we challenge the status quo is by making our products beautifully designed, simple to use, and user-friendly. That's the how.
Right.
And we happen to make great computers. That's the what.
See, the feeling is totally different. It's not just about buying a computer anymore.
No.
It attracts people who believe that, who identify with challenging the status quo. It's about shared identity, not just a transaction.
And that's the absolute key takeaway here. People don't buy what you do. They buy why you do it.
Yes.
This explains why a company like Apple has such incredible flexibility. They can move from computers to music players to phones.
Then people follow them because the underlying why that think different belief, it stays consistent. It's clear.
Right. Remember when they launched the iPod? The message wasn't about gigabytes initially. It was 1,000 songs in your pocket.
That tapped into the value for the customer's life. Listening anywhere, collecting music. It was about the experience, the freedom, not just the tech specs.
Exactly. Now, compare that to, say, Dell trying to get into MP3 players or PDAs back in the day.
Yeah, that didn't really take off, did it?
Not really, because Dell was known for what they did making computers. Efficient supply chains, maybe? Buying a music player from them just felt off. There was no shared belief, no compelling why connecting those different products.
They were kind of stuck in their what. And that's the danger. If you define yourself only by what you do, you limit your ability to grow, to innovate outside that box, and you struggle to build that deep loyalty that goes beyond just the current product.
So knowing your Prineke why isn't just like a philosophical exercise. It's crucial for lasting success, for real differentiation. If you're only competing on what price, features, service, you basically become a commodity.
Interchangeable, always fighting for the next sale based on those tangible things.
But the truly loyal customers, they're not just buying stuff. They're inspired by the cause, by what the company stands for. They feel like they belong.
It's a much stronger bond. Now, is having a clear why the only way to succeed? Probably not. You can have temporary success without it. But for lasting success and for authenticity, it's essential.
Authenticity, that's a big one. Being authentic means your words and actions actually line up with what you believe. And how can you do that if you aren't even clear on what you believe, on your why?
You can't. It's impossible. Which brings us to the order. It has to be. Clarity of why first, then the discipline of how living your values, and finally, the consistency of what. Making sure everything you do reflects the why.
Okay, let's pause here for a second. If you're finding this deep dive helpful, we'd really appreciate it if you take just a moment to hit like and subscribe. It helps us keep bringing you insights from great books and thinkers.
Yeah, it really does help the channel. Okay, so clarity, discipline, consistency. Let's look at Southwest Airlines. Their why was crystal clear: be the champion for the common person. They weren't just competing with other airlines, they saw themselves competing against cars and buses.
Targeting the 85% who couldn't afford to fly.
Exactly. Their how was all about efficiency, low cost, point-to-point routes, and their what was affordable flights. Everything flowed from that central why.
Now remember United's attempt, Song, or Delta's TED.
Vaguely. They were trying to do the low-cost thing too, right?
Yeah, they offered a similar what cheap flights, maybe even a similar how in terms of operations, but they lacked that clear, compelling why. Who were they for? What did they stand for other than being a cheaper version of the main airline?
And they didn't last. It shows that real differentiation, the kind that sticks, it comes from why, not just a slightly better what or how.
It's fascinating, though, that both manipulation and inspiration seem to tap into the same part of the brain.
That's right, the limbic brain, where our feelings, trust, loyalty, decision-making, all that stuff originates. But they engage it differently.
How so?
Well, manipulation tends to leverage short-term emotions: fear, desire, peer pressure. Inspiration, on the other hand, fosters loyalty based on shared beliefs, shared values. It's a deeper, more enduring connection.
Like the dating analogy you sometimes hear. Imagine Brad starts by listing his job, his car, his salary. That's leading with what?
Might get a polite nod, maybe.
But if Brad starts by sharing what he's passionate about, his values, why he does what he does,
What?
that's leading with why. It's much more engaging, right? It creates a potential connection.
Absolutely. It speaks to who he is, not just what he has. And biologically, our gut decisions, those feelings that something is right or wrong, they often come from this limbic brain aligning with our sense of Why? Sometimes even before our rational brain catches up to explain it.
We make the decision, then we rationalize it.
Often, yeah. Especially for decisions that involve trust or loyalty, which is why just throwing facts and figures at people doesn't always work if the underlying feeling isn't there.
Think about Gordon Bethune turning Continental Airlines around. He didn't just focus on spreadsheets. He gave employees something to believe in, a shared purpose. He built trust.
And trust is a feeling, right? It emerges when we sense that others are driven by something more than just self-interest, when there's a shared why.
It taps into that fundamental human need to belong. We want to be part of groups, communities, organizations that share our values, our beliefs.
Like the Sneetches, remember Dr. Seuss, wanting the star on their belly? We want to be with others who are like us, who believe what we believe. And companies that clearly communicate why, they attract people who want to belong to that group.
Contrast a typical job ad, all about skills, experience, the what, with Shackleton's famous ad for his Antarctic journey.
Oh yeah, the hazardous journey, small wages, bitter cold.
Exactly. It basically screamed danger and hardship, but promised honor and recognition. It wasn't appealing to everyone. It was specifically targeting people whose why involved embracing extreme challenge.
It was an incredibly effective filter. It attracted not just capable people, but people with the right mindset, the right internal drive for that specific ruling mission. He knew the why was more important than just the skills.
It reminds me of the story of the two stonemasons. Same job, same laying stones?
Right. One says, I'm laying stones. The other says, I'm building a cathedral.
Totally different perspective. The second guy understands the why. He feels part of something bigger, something meaningful. That changes everything. Motivation, quality of work, sense of belonging.
And that's what happens inside companies with a strong why. Employees are more inspired, more productive, more innovative because they see how their individual contribution connects to the larger purpose.
It creates this kind of safety net of trust.
That's a good way to put it. When you trust the people around you, when you believe you're all working towards the same goal for the right reasons, you're more willing to take risks, put in extra effort, help each other out.
Like General Lori Robinson, the weapons controller. Her skill wasn't just technical. Pilots trusted her because she deeply understood why her job mattered, protecting them, clearing their path. Her why was integrated into her why.
Contrast that with General Jumper forgetting, even for a moment, that he was part of a team, forgetting the shared why. In high-stakes situations, that trust and shared purpose are absolutely vital. Losing sight of it can be disastrous.
So, companies need to actively manage this, right? Keep the why clear, the how disciplined, the what consistent. Because trust, like why, is felt in that limbic brain. It can easily override logic if things feel misaligned.
Which also explains why celebrity endorsements can be hit or miss.
How so?
Well, if the celebrity genuinely seems to embody the company's name, why, if they feel like one of us to the target audience, it can build trust. But if it just feels like a paid transaction, a famous face slapped onto a product,
It falls flat. It's just another what.
exactly, there's no real connection to the why.
Okay, let's shift gears slightly and talk about how these ideas spread. The law of diffusion of innovations.
Right. This model breaks down how populations adopt new ideas or products. You've got the innovators, the first few percent, then early adopters, early majority, late majority, and finally the laggards.
Like a bell curve.
Pretty much. And the key insight here, especially for launching something new based on a strong why, is that you don't aim for the middle of the curve first.
You don't try to get everyone right away.
No. Your goal should be to connect with the left side of the curve, the innovators, and especially the early adopters. That's maybe 15–18% of the market.
Why them specifically?
Because they are the ones who are drawn to the why itself. They make gut decisions, they want to be first, they align with your beliefs. And crucially, they're the ones who will talk about it, who will become your evangelist.
They'll spread the word to the majority.
Exactly. You need to reach a tipping point with that first 15–18% who believe what you believe. If you can do that, the early majority and the rest are much more likely to follow.
Think about TiVo again. Revolutionary product, right?
Absolutely. But their marketing focused almost entirely on what it did. Pause live TV, skip commercials.
Features.
They didn't lead with WHY It Mattered, giving you control, challenging the broadcast schedule, empowering the viewer. They aimed for the masses with the what, instead of inspiring the early adopters with the why.
And they struggled to get mass adoption initially, despite the cool tech.
Right. Contrast that with Dr. King's I Have a Dream speech. People didn't gather on the ball just for him personally. They showed up because they believed in the cause he articulated so powerfully. He embodied their shared why.
He became the symbol of their belief.
Precisely. A compelling why can rally people around something much bigger than any one individual.
But the why alone isn't enough, is it? You mentioned the how being crucial.
Absolutely essential. The how makes the why tangible. You need the visionaries, the why types, but they desperately need the practical, grounded how types to build the structures, the systems, the products that bring the vision to life.
It's a partnership.
A critical partnership. Think Bill Gates, why democratize computing, and Paul Allen, how build the software, Herb Kelleher, why make flying accessible, and Roland King, how figure out the airline logistics, Steve Jobs, why challenge status quo with intuitive tech, and Steve Wozniak, how engineer the machines.
The visionary needs the builder.
Always. The why inspires, the how builds. You need both to achieve great things.
Look at Ron Bruder. His why seems to be this deep belief in alternative paths, in empowering people. And he's applied that why successfully to totally different fields, redeveloping contaminated land, than founding the Education for Employment Foundation.
The why transcends the what. His fundamental belief drives him across different industries and challenges. It shows the power and flexibility of a strong why.
Even great advertising often communicates why. Apple's 1984 commercial. It wasn't about megahertz or RAM.
No, it was a statement, a rebellion against conformity. Pure why. Challenging the status quo, empowering the individual. That's what resonated.
So, advertising should ideally tap into that why, not just list features. But as companies get bigger, holding on to that why gets harder, doesn't it?
It's a huge challenge. The founder's initial passion and clarity can get diluted. Systems, processes, new people come in. You have to consciously work to keep that why embedded in the culture and decision-making.
Communication becomes key, but not just broadcasting, listening to. Understanding how your symbols are perceived.
Exactly. Think about powerful symbols, the Lincoln Memorial, a flag. They represent deep beliefs. A company's logo can become a symbol too, like Harley-Davidson's, but only if it consistently represents a clear why that people connect with.
It needs to stand for something.
Yeah.
Which brings us to the celery test.
Ah, yes, the celery test. It's a great practical filter. If your stated why is, say, to live a healthy lifestyle, then when you're at the store, deciding between buying celery and donuts, the celery passes the test. The donuts don't. It's about making choices, big and small, that are consistent with your why.
So it provides clarity and ensures consistency in your actions.
Precisely. It helps you filter out things that, while maybe tempting or seem like good ideas in isolation, don't actually align with your core purpose.
Like Mark choosing a Disney DVD. It's not just the movie, it's the trust built on Disney's perceived why reliable family entertainment.
That trust, built over time through consistent delivery on their why, simplifies the choice.
But what happens when the actions don't pass the celery test? Like Volkswagen, the people's car, launching the super luxury Phaeton.
Right. Great car, technically, but did it align with VW's established why? For many people, it didn't. It felt inconsistent, and it struggled to gain traction. The what clashed with the why.
Or Walmart. After Sam Walton, many feel the why shifted. What seemed like a focus on the customer and community became perceived more as just price, sometimes at a human cost.
And that perceived shift, that fuzziness around the why, arguably led to a decline in public perception and trust, even if the what low prices remained. Losing sight of why can erode the foundation.
You even hear founders say they lose passion when their own company becomes just about the what and how, losing touch with the original spark, the why.
That's the split. When the why gets fuzzy, especially during growth, the organization might still be loud, lots of marketing, lots of activity, but it's not clear anymore, like AOL in its later stages, perhaps.
So what gets measured gets done. Metrics need to reflect the why, not just the what.
Exactly. Like the collections agency measuring respect shown to debtors, not just dollars collected, or the construction company reinforcing core values alongside project completion. The metrics have to align with the purpose.
Because value itself is often a feeling, isn't it? Tied to the why. Like choosing a branded tennis racket over a generic one.
Brand perception is rooted in why. It's not just a calculation.
And leadership is key. Inspiring leaders embody the why. And succession is crucial. The next leader needs to represent, or at least deeply understand, that founding why.
Like Southwest managed to do, keeping that culture, that why alive through leadership changes.
Even Sam Walton. Maybe he didn't have a formal why statement, but his actions showed it, making things affordable, serving rural areas. His decisions passed the celery test for that implicit why.
And you could argue Costco, with its focus on employee well-being, echoes some of those original principles. Their why seems clear. Apple's why empowering individuals, challenging norms, you see it in the products, the I prefix, the ads.
So where does the why come from? You said it's often looking back.
Yeah, it's typically not found in market research about the future. It's usually rooted in the past. The founder's origin story, their core beliefs, what drove them initially. Like pulling back an arrow before releasing it, you need to understand the starting point, the driving force.
Like the speaker's own journey, discovering his why was about inspiring others, which led him to share the Golden Circle idea freely.
An action consistent with his why.
And finally, that story of Ben Coleman, the runner with cerebral palsy finishing the race. What inspires us isn't just the act of finishing.
No, it's the why behind it. The incredible determination, the driving force that pushed him through despite the immense challenges. That's where the real inspiration lies.
So as you've been listening, maybe take a moment to think about the why behind your own actions, or the organizations you interact with and support.
And perhaps a final thought to leave you with. What might change in our own lives or in the wider world if we all made a more conscious effort to truly start with why?
We would appreciate it if you take a minute to like and subscribe, and as a result, we will continually give you up-to-date books and relevant podcasts. And if you want to really immerse yourself even further in these ideas, definitely check out the book Start With Why by Simon Sinek. We've put a link and more information in the description below.
It's a foundational read for this way of thinking.
This is the end of the podcast. As always, thank you for listening, and please subscribe.
Thank you for listening to the Mini Book Podcast. See you next time.